Hello, I'm Adam Thompson, the designer and developer of First Earth, and I'm going to tell you what I've been working on and what I will be working on. So I'm working on the next build, which will be 0.8.7. And on the weekend, I was messing around, just exploring around, because it's pretty fun to explore now. And I got pretty frustrated with the zone loading. Every time you cross a zone boundary, the zones are seamless, but when you cross, it has to load and it gets all choppy for 3 to 5 seconds, depending on your computer. And I just found that to be pretty frustrating. So the zone system is something I wrote years ago, and I didn't know what I would need when I wrote it, and now I know. So I scrapped the entire old zone loading system and created a new one. And so it does things like when you cross a zone boundary, it doesn't get rid of the old zones like the old one did. It keeps them in memory for a little while in case you cross again. So now if you go back and forth across a boundary, it's not loading constantly, it's just switching you pretty fast. And I sped up the process of loading, and I made it a lot less likely to have bugs and fixed some problems like the water was way off and stuff like that. So that you guys are going to like. Looking at my notes here, I made a whole bunch of graphics improvements. So I switched from forward rendering to deferred rendering. I added a full screen anti-aliasing shader option. I simplified the graphics options a lot. And I fixed some water display issues and some daytime issues. So graphics improvements, better options. Oh, I made it so you can maximize the window. So before you couldn't even resize it. And the way I like to play games is I like to maximize the window, but keep it windowed, not full screen, so I can alt-tab really easily. So now you can do that with First Earth. The other major fix that I have in is water. So water on slopes, like on mountainsides in the old build, currently is barely visible. It's like it's almost underground. Sometimes it's not visible at all. So I fixed that. The reason that was happening is because I had it so that, well, water is just a plane, just a flat plane, and it can be a little curved, but basically it's a flat plane. There's no volume to it. And so the only reason you don't see the edges of water is because the edges of it are under the land. So you have like a riverbed. The water just comes here, and the edges of the water are just under the land. That's why you don't see jagged edges. And the way that I achieved that on very shallow riverbeds was I made it so that when there's a slope, like the riverbed edge slope, the water will actually go down. And so the water bends down on slopes. The problem there is that on the mountainside slopes, the water was, on a legitimate mountainside, the water was also going down for the entire thing, and that's why it was under the land. So I fixed that by, rather than having water go down on land slopes, I have the water bend down on the edge of the water. So on the edge of the water plane, it bends down, and that hides the edges on riverbeds without hiding it on mountain slopes. So that looks a lot better. That'll be in the next build that you guys see. And then today, I think I'm going to work on adding animals, because my fiance is a 3D animator, actually, and she created a deer for me. So I have this deer, and I want to add it to First Earth. It's actually a lot more involved than just adding the model and some scripts or something, because it has to be server-based. I want everything in First Earth. It's important to me that everything is real, that everything is server-driven like a real world, so that you're not just seeing on your screen something that only you are seeing, but you're seeing the same thing everybody is seeing, something that is the First Earth world. So these deer need to be driven by the server. The server needs to control where they spawn. So I've got a list of properties that I'm going to have animals have. I don't want to just read them off because that gives away too much information about how the game works. And I want the players to discover things for themselves. But things like animals will have things like hunger, what sort of food sources they have, what their origin area is, and things like that. So what I'm going to do is have the server spawn animals when those animals are appropriate for a given type of land, and that land type is from satellite data. So in the current area where you spawn in First Earth, the deer are pretty appropriate in certain parts of it. So I'll spawn the deer in those parts, and then the deer will want to search for food. So they'll stay in an area that has food, but they will be searching a little bit. There was a system that somebody tried to implement for Ultima Online, that one of the designers on Ultima Online wrote an article about this. And not all of the system actually made it into the Ultima Online game, but some of it did. And the system is really cool. How it worked was that the animals there had a stat like a hunger stat. And the more hungry they were, the farther they would roam from their spawn point searching for food. So when animals got hungry, like if you have a wolf and it got more hungry, it would wander further and further from where you would normally find wolves, and it might end up in your town or something. That was the idea. I don't think that all made it in, but I could see that as a player. There was some of that. And they wanted it to interact with other systems like the growth system. So they wanted it to be like you would, when there was a drought, there would be less food available, and so the wolves would be roaming further, and they'd be more hungry, they'd be more aggressive. So during a drought, it would be much more dangerous to travel through some places, or your town might get attacked by starving wolves. I thought that was a really cool idea, and I think I can do that in First Earth. So I'll have a stat like that, and I don't have growth yet, like food growth, food source growth, but I will have that, and so the hunger stat will determine things like how far they wander, how aggressive they are, even pack elements. So I'm pretty ambitious with how much I can get done in a day, but I want to try to get this animal thing in today, get the deer in there, so that we have deer wandering around First Earth. And then if I do finish that, I've got some other things I could take on. I need to work on some survival things and some harvesting to get that gameplay going. That's all I have to say, and I'll see you in game.